All right. Welcome back, friends. Welcome back to my podcast, Parenting, Leading, and Teaching with Emotional Intelligence and Love. And today we are digging in with some more nuggets and some more tools. And I have a really fascinating guest here with me. Her name is LaNysha Adams. I'm really honored to have LaNysha with us here today because she's a TEDx speaker. She's a 10-time award-winning author, and she created a book and a program called Me Power, which she's going to dive into in a little bit. And currently, she works in Santa Fe, New Mexico, as the director of student wellness at the community college, actually. And she has two little ones at home, and really is able to take this Me Power framework into her life, into her work. And she's going to be sharing a little bit of that with us today. So before I say more, let me introduce LaNysha. And yeah, I'm sure I left some things out. So please share.
Hi
And
there.
thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so cool to join you and to be able to share space with you today.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
I think the only thing that you left out is that things about me that aren't role specific, which I always like to talk about because it's so important. I mean, I think roles are really important, whatever we choose, but I'm a foodie. I love
Oh,
connecting with
nice.
people, and I have a guilty pleasure of watching Love is Blind, all of them,
Oh
all
my
over the
gosh, you're like
world.
my daughter.
That's like my favorite, one of my favorite pastimes is watching that
I'm
show.
always like, do we have to watch this again?
I find it fascinating. But yeah. So
So is that how you
we're
met your
not
partner before you became
no
a mom? You were on the Love is Blind show?
no way.
It's just maybe a fantasy or gee, what would that be like?
No, I you know what I love about it? I was journaling about this because I was trying to unpack like, well, what is it about the dynamics that are fascinating for me? I
Yeah.
watch no TV. Like I don't watch anything. But I watch that. And I think it's fascinating to have this idea that people really want to find someone and then they're willing to do this experiment in a very unique way to kind of
Yeah.
separate, take out all the social things that we need and to make sense of who someone is. So you literally can only hear their voice, and that's how the connection is built. And then what I
Mm,
really love is how that's like a fantasy, but then when they get to the real
yeah.
life part, it all breaks down because it's like you can only say so much. You have to see someone, you have to
Yeah.
feel it and be embodied. And so I really love watching that unfold. And it's so
Right.
entertaining. It's so entertaining.
Oh, that is yeah. And so I don't watch it, so I don't really understand all the dynamics of it, but is that what happens most of the time? They finally meet each other and then they don't get together, or is it
Yep.
or do some of them actually stay together?
Well, yeah, some do. Like the first season, it was amazing because you don't see a lot of shows where there's interracial couples, at least not reality shows, and it was really beautiful. In that they were like a fan favorite. First season was I think 8 years ago. Anyway, they've stayed together. They have two kids. So that's really cool. And there
Oh,
are a
nice.
handful of examples like that. But now it's all over the world. So it's really a fascinating thing, but I know we're not
Mm,
here to talk about Love is Blood.
yeah. Yeah. Are they allowed to say what they look like and stuff to each other or no?
Mm-mm.
No.
No,
Okay.
I think sometimes they do cheat because, there are cultural differences. Like if you're really religious or if there's something specific about who you are that, your partner kind of needs to know. I
Yeah.
think that does come up, but then sometimes that skews, like if you're like from an Asian background, like you start thinking if you just know that and you don't know anything else about how they look, maybe you start some of the biases or whatever feelings or your prior knowledge
Yeah.
starts coming in on it.
Implicit
Um,
bias. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so they really try to discourage it, but it's just fascinating. Like, and
Yeah.
of course, it's a TV show, right? So everyone looks relatively attractive. I mean, but I mean, who cares? Like, somebody might be attractive, and then you might not see them as such. But if you have this
Yeah.
emotional connection, the question in the experiment is is love truly blind? Is that emotional connection enough
Yeah.
to sustain that relationship? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I know that we spent a lot of, we spent a few minutes on Love is Blind, but I also, looking at all the work that you've done, I can see how a show like that would be interesting to you because it is, I mean, with your work on Me Power, there's a certain component of, owning your personal power when you're making these decisions, right? So
Absolutely.
maybe that's part of the appeal. I'm just guessing.
Yes.
But I know, yeah, okay, so LaNysha and I were talking right before we went live here on the podcast, and I think one of the things that we share in common is our passion for people developing kind of, and I say this a lot in my podcast, that internal locus of control, right? Where you're self-managing, you're self-regulating. In Montessori, we work with students from a very young age, um, to foster the development of that. When people feel capable, right, then they're much more likely to look inwards when they're making decisions and making choices. So yeah, so LaNysha has this book and this program called Me Power that she's shared on a TEDx talk. And her books are available for you to purchase and read and enjoy. But I would like, LaNysha, for you to just kind of talk in simple terms. What is Me Power, and how does it help people in the way that in the ways that you and I discussed before we went live on this podcast?
Yeah, for sure. So, me power, as I'm defining it, is knowledge of self and principled action in five key
Mm-hmm.
ways. And these
Mm-hmm.
ways are practices like, embrace your barriers, focus on your strengths, speak for your life, like give voice to who you are, choose your guides, and ritualize your reflection. And I really, when unpacking, like, or tried to define, like, what is empowerment when you're not waiting for someone to give you permission or authority.
Yeah.
I really was like, I was bothered. I've been bothered by that definition of empower. Like, you look it up in the dictionary, that's what you're going to find. And I've been
Yeah.
so bothered by that idea that someone has to wait for permission or be granted
Instead of
the
just
right.
automatically being empowered. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly, exactly. And it's not like you're gonna wake up and it's a feeling. You're gonna, yeah, maybe you might feel empowered. Someone says something to you and it really gives you a bump, and you're like, okay, I'm encouraged. I'm gonna go and do this. But for real, empowerment is like a practice, like how do you really showcase, how do you really build your life in a way that you choose? I mean, this
Mm-hmm.
is the fundamental question.
Yeah.
So I think, I think it really helps, like, understanding this framework. I really was trying to see, well, how can we catalyze other people? How can we create conditions and community to really be optimal for this kind of me powerment to occur, to unfold,
Mm-hmm.
to blossom?
Oh.
Like, that's kind of that's the
Oh, yeah.
motivation for it, right? Because I think if we're doing work, like, we've been in education, like you've been in
Right.
it for 20 plus years, right? All throughout all the things in education. And I think when we're looking at someone and even in systems like designing learning experiences for people, what the part about learning that I think captivates us as educators is how curious people are and how they explore
Mm,
and how they get insight into not only what the knowledge of the discipline is, but of themselves. And so
right.
that process is lifelong, because we go through so many things, and so many things happen in our life to change our point of view. So if we're not unpacking, like, well, what is that about, and kind of keeping a pulse on it, how do you even know what your internal locus of control is? You
Right. Or
can't.
do you even have one?
Or do
Yeah.
you even have one? I mean, yeah, like, who are you? Like, what is this? Like, we really have to, I think, have more practices to really unpack that and make sense of it for ourselves, outside of like what someone else is telling us, or outside of roles and conditions that have conditioned our thinking and way of being. I mean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's what happens during these transitional moments of crises, right? Like when the kids leave home, then you're an empty nester. Okay, well, what is
Right.
that label? What is that about? Is that really who you are, or is that just part of your life? And then
Right.
where is the crisis coming from? Same thing with menopause, same thing with, I mean, we could pick any different point
Yeah,
in
having your
life,
first child. Yeah.
right? Having your first child, figuring out how you're going to be in that new identity as a parent. I mean, there's so many points in our life where we really have to do this work.
Mhm.
And so I really hope that this framework and this concept helps people to do that in an easier way where it's not
Yeah.
so overwhelming.
Yeah. And so I guess what I'm hearing too is like the word empower is kind of being replaced by me power. So don't look for power to come from or to be granted from somebody. Somebody else does not have to empower you. You have that power within you already.
Mhm.
and
Absolutely.
then and then just tapping into it and helping it come alive, and then choosing the path and the course of your life and all of the decisions you're going to make from there. And I think I love that. Like, oftentimes we do Montessori Mondays on this podcast, and that's so Montessori in that sense, because we, as Montessori educators, we look at every child, and we know that every child's full potential could be, amazing. So amazing. Every child has the capability to be the world's most fabulous creature, so we see them in that, with that lens. And then we're constantly fostering, as you were saying, fostering a love of learning, right? So that they actually, we're kind of giving them the message that you can actually be in control of your education, and manage all of it, and continue learning for the rest of your life. So that's one of the key things about Montessori that we do, is we plant that seed of, learning is fun. And children, if you prepare the environment properly, do like
Mhm.
to work, and they do like to learn. And then you're kind of handing it over to them, passing the baton, saying, okay, ideally, the ideal is that the children are educating themselves to the as much as possible, in
Mhm.
these classrooms. And so not all the children do that, but that's kind of what we're striving for all the time. And that internal locus of control, right, where they're making decisions out of a deep sense of integrity, in their own value system, instead of, oh, I'm going to, I want to do this so my teacher will be happy, or my parents are going to be happy, or I have to get a good grade, so my parents will let me go out on Friday nights. I mean, I was raised in the traditional education system, and that's kind of what my life was. As long as
Mhm.
I get good grades and I do what people ask me to do, then I'll have more freedom. So refreshing to go to Montessori training and learn that there's a different way to live.
Yeah.
And you can start that at any age, right? I mean, you can start that shift at any age.
At any age, and we should be in that space. I mean, it's so beautiful, right, to be thinking about that, holding that space for children, and then seeing how they incorporate it and how they do it, right? Because they're such quick learners, so absorbent, right? And then
Right. The
so
absorbent mind,
tasty.
Maria Montessori calls it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yep, yep, yep. And how beautiful it is to see it unfolding. And then you're like, what about all the adults who've forgotten that? I mean, there's so much about life that makes you really question, maybe puts you outside of the mindset altogether, I
Right.
think.
For sure. So, couple things that you said, when you were talking about the five principles.
Hmm.
One of the things you said was choosing your guide. What does that mean?
Yeah, choosing your guide. So I started talking about this idea from a place of we're as we go through life, like me power is very me focused. I mean, that's just how it is. But I took M and switched it to me. So it's me empower to me power. But this idea, like, the strength of who you are has to be, that's like the foundation. But then we don't live on the planet alone. So as we're going through life, there are people who we interact with who are going to touch our lives, who we need for different reasons. Like
Hmm.
in the college context, you always need, like, students are always looking for a letter of recommendation because they're going to need it for something else. Or if you have a job, you need references. So though the
Right.
people that you typically put down are people who've seen you performing, and then they might have something to say to guide you. So I really took this stance of like, if we're capable in going through life, we can't do it alone. So who are we going to choose to influence us? And I really was thinking like in terms of like a
Yeah.
board of directors, you know,
Like a
like
mentor. Yeah.
yes,
Or
or mentors could be one, but I've never had a formal mentor, which is kind of funny. But I think like I've found coaches, I've had friends in different capacities, and I like to think of like choosing your guides, like building your own board of directors,
yeah.
like this
Yeah.
concept, right? Like each person on that board has a role to play, and the role is, you know, how do they influence your life? Maybe you pick somebody that you admire, you look up to, maybe they have a quality that you know you don't showcase for yourself, you know, and then you surround yourself with different folks, and then you're looking at them like, how do I want to choose to take from that
Yeah.
relationship something that's
Yeah.
going to better myself and also the people that I'm interacting with, right? Outside of that friendship, outside of that relationship. So that's choose your guides. I mean, I think you know, it's to really highlight this idea that we're not going in alone. Me power is not like a narcissistic encouragement,
Like
you
you're
know.
not on your own island. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes. And then we talked about that in my graduate program too for transformational leadership and coaching, how when there are certain aspects of of people that are appealing to you, then there's probably something within you that's passionate about that particular skill or characteristic that they're portraying. And so you can spend time with them and study them and start to develop that passion within you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love that. Choose your guide. And then in Montessori, we call our teachers guides because the
Mm-hmm.
guides, we call them
Yeah.
guides because the children are educating themselves just as
Mm-hmm.
much as the teachers. So we're guiding them to develop that love for learning and to engage joyfully in a world that's abundant.
Exactly.
So
In a world that's
yeah,
abundant. That's it.
yeah.
There's no limit to that abundance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes, and I really think in how people, the first 3 years of life, as we know, are so important, but you start to develop those messages. Is the world scarce and scary, or is it a joyful and abundant? And we want children to be raised with the latter, right, perspective, so that they can joyfully engage in the world, in an
yes,
abundant world. So,
yes. We always get to
and then
choose. We always
yeah,
get to choose.
you equip them to make choices that are going to be about them and help them live, a fruitful and fulfilling life. I think that, Montessori does that and your program does that. So,
Mhm.
I love the synergy between your work and my work. And then I've talked a lot about internal locus of control, and I know you've used the term tapping into your agency.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Is that similar to what I'm talking about
Oh,
with Julian
absolutely.
Rotter's locus of control work?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I talk about it in the book, and I try to relate it to this idea of self-awareness as it relates to like being a really key part of emotional intelligence, right? Which I know you talk a lot about, but it comes from a place like this idea you can't change what you don't notice. So
Hmm.
you know, we really have to kind of start looking at a way to identify, you know, how we feel, and then also how we're experiencing those feelings. Because sometimes, you know, if we're not acting from a place of self-awareness, we might think of those feelings as the reality, like over like that
Oh,
those emotions override your perception, and then that is like the
yeah.
truth according to
The
you.
story, the story we're telling ourselves. Yes.
That's right. So, like, oh, do you realize you're telling a story? What is the story? How would you describe the story? And then, do you
Hmm.
want to keep that story going, or do you want to change it? You know, like,
Yeah.
do you want to change it somehow? But first, we have to figure out, okay, well, what is the thing that we're
Uh-huh.
discussing? What is the
Uh-huh.
story? You know, like,
Right.
do I
And and I don't have to be the character victim in the story, you
exactly
know?
exactly right? Like, how what are the tweaks that I can make, right? To stand in my power to make it turn out different, right? You can't
Right.
just start
Yeah.
rewriting it, but you can, like you can't think it and then it changes right away. Like that's not how it works. But I think if you think it and then you live it, and then it will change. Like you have to take the action. It can't just be stuck in
Right.
concept. So
Right.
this is the idea. It's
I
exactly
love
the
that.
same.
Yeah, because when we're agonizing over something that happened, with another person or a couple of, a social situation, and we complain and we whine and, wallow in self-pity, we're just actually giving them our personal power, right? We're relinquishing it and letting them have it. Whereas we could tap into that and say, well, what do I want to do about this? Instead of, well, this is what happened. This is what happened. What do you
Yeah,
want?
yeah, yeah. And
What do
structure.
you want and how are you going
Yeah,
to get there?
what do you want? And even in a Montessori context, like, right, like there's that structure, there's the structure of the day, right? We have a fixed
Absolutely.
day, but then in these increments, there are a lot of choices you can make. And even with the learning, there you can choose which station you want to go to. And even if you I've seen some contexts where they restrict, they like everyone has to start somewhere and then there's a rotation because it's fixed.
Oh,
But even
yeah.
if they were to do that, the children still have choice, so much choice in how they want
Yeah.
to explore, how they want to open that door to really start discovering, how am I in relation to this? What is it
Hmm.
happening here?
What is
Oh,
my
15,
cosmic task? Yeah.
what's my cosmic tag? Oh, 15 minutes is up. Oh, okay. I'm gonna go over here now. It was like
Yeah.
there is that structure, but then there's within that structure, it is like an intentionality baked into
Hmm.
what people do by design, but it's what they're doing is what they're choosing. Those children, what
Hmm.
are they choosing to discover and explore? And I think
Yeah.
this stance, like if we see life like that, like if we as adults see life in that way,
Yeah.
it enriches us so much. But it's not just about us because we are also intersecting with so many other people. So it has this ripple effect, right? If I'm feeling like that, then I'm going to come into this context and also shape it so that other people can feel that way too,
Hmm.
right? And so
Hmm.
I call that activating me power, but it's really tapping into your agency, really owning that locus of control, really seeing
Yeah.
like how you can move even within a structure, because the structures are fixed. There's only 24 hours in a day, 168 hours in a week.
True.
You can't change
True.
that.
You know, yeah. And what I'm thinking about right now as you're talking, and I know that we use the word empower a lot in positive discipline because we want children to start having the power, to make choices and to grow, socially and emotionally and academically and whatever way, by experiencing, what choices they're making, and are those choices helping them succeed or fail, and neither one of them's bad. It's just how we learn. And I think what a lot of people don't understand is that when you think of empower or me power, right? Giving encouraging people's personal power. The opposite of that is kind of enabling, right? And rescuing is, everybody knows that rescuing is a form of enabling, right? And making excuses for people, but there's other ways of enabling, like, because anytime you get in between a child's um, issue and a choice as how they're going to move into solution oriented problem solving, you're enabling. And so, like, punishment is actually a form of enabling. Inserting measures of control, like I know some Montessori teachers use these really, really scripted work plans, where
Mhm.
the children really aren't making much choice because you've told them exactly what to do. You're enabling them. It's much more powerful for the child to have to figure out, oh, I've had all of these lessons. I have to figure out my day, how I'm going to get this work done. Right. If you're telling them what to do all the time, it's really a form of enabling.
I
So,
mean, you
yeah.
said it right there. I mean, it's so wild to really. once you start unpacking like structurally, like, okay, well, in this context, how is it actually like supporting what we're saying? Right. We're gonna
Right.
empower them, but really depending on the interpretation of what that is like, I'm gonna get in there and I'm gonna take the action to really help, kind of shake it into them. give
Yeah.
give it to them by shaking it.
Right.
Like that's not how that works. And I was
Ash.
thinking, I was thinking about how kids learn up to like 70% of their emotional response by watching adults.
Yeah.
So how we've been like even in that structured environment where if people know the basics of Montessori, but I would argue that a lot of kids, most kids don't have that structured environment
No.
understanding from their adults. And so they're kind of like interpreting this idea of like, I need to look and see, do I have the permission? Can I move? Can I do it or can I not? Like, I'm not sure
Hmm.
because someone's always telling you, someone's always guiding and directing you. But,
Right. And then, yeah.
and where's your choice in that?
Yeah. And then they're always reacting in fear, right? Like, oh, and waiting for permission or doing something that they don't know if they have permission for, and then having fear around that.
Right. Fear and
Um,
shame, and like
yes,
all
yes.
of the things that we don't want to like impose on them. But I would argue that when we practice empowerment and like when we practice me power in the real way, right, from the inside out, from
Right.
encouraging choice, we're teaching kids that their emotions are safe and the connection is possible. And then you can build something that you want, not that you just have to do because somebody told you. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah. Yeah,
really
yeah.
helpful.
I mean, yes, life is supposed to be a joyful journey of um, driven by your internal desires and passions and choices, not something just to get through. you know?
Right, right, right.
Um,
I mean, it's like, well, dang, like, what do you know? You trying to get to what you trying to get through? Because at the end, it's death. Like, so you trying to
yeah.
get to that? Like, I don't know if that's a
Yes.
good look. I don't know if that's a good look.
You're no, I totally agree with you. And like school should be if children are spending 7, 8 hours a day there, then
Right,
it should be a joyful, it should be a place that they want to go, not something they
right.
have to get through. And my personal children, I have three, they're grown now, but went to Montessori because I was always, I was either teaching or I was leading the Montessori school. So it was kind of all in the family. We got up in the morning and we all went to the Montessori school together.
That's awesome.
And I mean, I have so many stories, but one story that stands out in my mind as we're talking about this, yeah, school is, a place where we should want to go. My youngest had the swine flu. Um,
Oh,
I think guess it was 2008 or something like that.
oh my
We were
gosh.
at Alquin Montessori. I was the head of school there in Chicago, and he was so upset that he couldn't go to school. He was like, "Mom,
Because he was
can't you
sick.
just can't you just give me some Advil or some Motrin or something?" I'm like, "No, honey, you're contagious." And so what 12-year-old would rather be at school than it be at home?
I mean, that's
That's such a
beautiful.
testament. And so there's that. And I think for adults, yeah, I mean, yes, we want to create educational environments where children actually want to be there. Um, and for adults with their work, instead of looking for meaning in their work, they can bring meaning to their
Their
work.
work. Exactly. Because
And
wherever you
yeah,
go, there you are. I mean, come on. Like we really, how are we showing up? What are we bringing
yeah.
with us? I mean, it's kind of amazing. Like I love that you said that. It's like,
Yes, because you could just be sitting there at work looking at your clock and, hoping the day will end. Or you could get up in the morning and choose that it's going to be a wonderful day and you're going to bring meaning to your work in some way, shape, or form. And
yes,
yes, there are systems and routines to help people feel safe in educational environments and work environments. Um, but when they are so prescriptive that there's no room for creativity, you know, that's
yeah,
when that's when people don't show up as their magnificent selves and they're, not living to their potential.
right. They're doled out. Yeah, and that's
Hmm.
with that. I mean, it's like where is the spark? And is that the right environment? Maybe it is, maybe it is not. Well, then what are you going to do about it? Do you stay there, or
Exactly.
do you take the actions and then move to
Yeah.
choose something different? I mean, I think that's the, it's like, gosh, like the earlier people understand, like, hey, getting to wherever you want to be in life is all about that. We can add, I want to own a home. I want to do ba ba ba. I want to get this degree. We can add the goals, right? And however lofty they might be. But what one thing we don't know is how it's going to shake out. Really, we can be so
Yeah.
determined. We don't know the path exactly, but we have to keep moving forward. We must.
Hmm.
It's like that's the one thing we know. If we take a action from a place of choice with integrity, and we are exploring and we're discovering and we're learning, and we keep doing that, we will get to wherever we decide we want to be. I think
Hmm.
ultimately,
Hmm.
it's like
Yeah.
that's life. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
totally agree. And sometimes you're making choices that are kind of risky. But
Yeah,
if you don't take any risks, you'll never know, if it's going to shake out. And um,
exactly. Exactly. My favorite example of that for myself personally, I grew up in California, Southern California, was in college in San Diego. And when I remember when I was young, my mom married my stepdad, who was in the Navy, and then he traveled all over the world. So when I turned 18, one of the gifts that I got was to get a passport. And like, it took me to get the picture, and then we filled out the application. And it was kind of a big deal because I was like, I'm not go where am I gonna go? He's like, you don't know where you're gonna go. You're gonna be ready though. Whatever it is, you're gonna be ready. So then that kind of got me thinking as I started college, like freshman year. I went to the study abroad office. I found out that I could go abroad. So my first study, I did two in college, an undergrad. My first one was
good for
in
you.
England. And it was like I did a spring semester over in England. I was there for 9 months. And what's wild about that is I had never left California or Nevada. I never left the
Oh,
country.
wow.
So I get on the plane. Well, I guess I've been to Mexico, but when you're from San Diego,
Yeah.
it doesn't count. But
That's where you go. Yeah.
exactly. So like I got on the plane, and the first leg of the trip was fine. It was from San Diego to Chicago. And then I got out of Chicago and I had to transfer to go to London. And as I'm on that second flight, I started panicking. I had my first panic attack, and I wanted to get off the plane. I was like very sick, like vomiting on the plane, and like it was crazy. It was like the most wild experience because I didn't think, I hadn't thought like what is going to happen when I land. And then when I was on the plane, the second leg, I was like, what's going to happen when I land? I don't know where to go. I don't know, and I didn't have, there were no cell phones, there were no iPhones and whatever. So I had a map,
Right.
and then I don't know, I just started freaking out. And, that was such a huge risk to go by myself to this country. And then I went like 2 weeks in advance, and I had, to kind of go around before school
Figure out
started.
where you're going, how you're gonna, yeah.
Oh my
I,
gosh, I didn't even know what the country code was for the US to call out on the phone, the
oh,
payphone. I had to
wow.
use a calling card. And it's like if you've never done it, you don't know. So I
Right.
have the calling card, and then I was punching it in, and I was thinking, what have I done? Like this is a mistake.
I'm here now.
I need to go
Yeah.
back. Let me go back to California. But that was such a huge risk. But what's so beautiful about that is like, in my life now, like once you start building your life, I have two small children,
Yeah.
I couldn't just go to another place for 9 months and live like and explore and really learn and discover like what am I about here. But I think like sometimes we have to take those big bold risks that really disrupt our nervous systems. I mean, like,
Yes.
like
Um,
it could be as big or as small as even doing a TED talk, like it could be like that
yes.
too.
And getting outside your comfort zone.
Yes,
Um,
yes, yes.
and I'm trying to think, one of the things that we studied in my master's class was existential philosophy, which was my favorite. And I'm trying to think the philosopher who said this, but I can't think of his name right now. But he was talking about when you're on the edge of a cliff, and how you have those nervous butterflies in your stomach. It's not because you're afraid you're going to fall; it's because you're afraid you're going to jump. And he wasn't speaking of jumping to your death, but jumping into your most powerful self, and how it's hard for us sometimes to do that because we don't want to leave our comfort zone. It's loss aversion, right? We'd rather not lose what we have than gain what we could have.
Yeah, because
Which is
why? I
just
mean, you're safe.
mindset.
You're
Mm-hmm.
safe. You don't want to take the risk. Why would I want to take the risk? You don't know how it's going to turn out. Well, guess what?
Yeah,
Even with the safety, you don't know how it's going to turn out. So just take the
exactly.
risk. Like, I mean, come on,
Ex-
it's safe risks. Take the
right,
safe
right,
risks.
right. Like healthy risk, not like
Yeah, exactly.
we're not
Crazy
talking
risk.
about yucky, risky behavior.
No, no, not that.
Well, and I think one of the things too that with me power that you've touched on in our conversation is simple rituals. And one of the things that I always did as a classroom teacher is I had a classroom meeting every day right before a transition, like right before lunch, and we all sat in a circle so we could all see each other.
Mhm.
And this was the time when children, could talk about things that were bothering them, and we'd role play and we'd brainstorm and we'd move into solution oriented problem solving as a group. But the
Mhm.
first thing that we always did is I used a talking stick, and I would pass the talking stick around the circle, and children and they didn't have to, they could pass, but they could compliment or appreciate somebody else in the room. And or they could ask for a compliment if they were kind of like feeling yucky that day. And that was a beautiful little ritual. So yeah, do you want to talk a little, and I encourage families to do that too at family meetings. Is there talk about your
Yes.
thoughts around that?
Yeah, no, I love that. I started doing these high, low, and glows with my kids.
Oh
And
yeah,
I learned that, like this is a common like practice for families to do with kids. And like you talk about, a high point in your day, a low point, and something that you're grateful for. That's a glow part. And like this classroom ritual that you're talking about, there's so much research to show like it really helps promote connection and pro-social behavior, and there's so
yeah,
much change around kids around that. But when I talk about ritualize your reflection, I'm really kind of like getting to this idea that, over time, so many things happen. Like what are we? We're almost through the 2025. I was gonna
right.
say 2024. I'm like, what happened? We're
Oh
almost
yeah.
this year, and so much has happened. And so if you don't take stock until the start of the next year, it's kind of like, how are you going to remember all the wonderful things that occurred and all the learnings that you had? So
Right.
ritualizing your reflection is really about picking a point in time. It could be every day, it could be once a month, it could be once a week, for you to really check in with yourself and like how you're
Yeah.
navigating along the way, right? And
Oh
so
yeah.
like, what am I feeling? What do I need? What's one small action I can take that aligns with how I'm developing or what I want to
Yeah.
accomplish or who I want to be. Like this idea of like really checking in with yourself regularly. And we can use some of these practices that we talked about, right? Like
Yeah.
expressing gratitude and being really grateful for like being able to wake up today. Like I'm so
Right. Right.
happy about that, and I feel energy from that, and I want to take that throughout my day. And then when I
Yeah.
think about like, well, what are my accomplishments for this month, I think there's a different process that you go through when you're thinking about how did I navigate, how was I living,
Yeah.
and I think that's really important as a
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah. And accomplishments can be, just changing a bad habit or
Oh yeah,
or restoring, and clearing with a friend or somebody that you've had, that you're having some that you've maybe had a tiff or whatever, and you're not liking the way it ended up.
yeah,
So I think oftentimes when people hear accomplishments, they think, oh, what degree am I going to get? What award am I going to get? But accomplishments can be, emotional intelligence accomplishments. And I love the way you said, what is one small task? So sometimes when we check in with ourselves and we're not feeling good about we are, it can feel overwhelming, right? How do I get out of this rut? One small, yeah,
yeah. Go for a walk.
go,
Uh,
yeah, do one small thing leads to more things. You don't have to fix it immediately, all the way around.
Absolutely. I mean, the one small task could be, I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna go treat myself to something.
Mhm.
Maybe when you have a busy day and it's like the most counterintuitive thing you could do when you're so stressed and busy is to like
Right.
take a pause, take a beat.
And go take a bath. Yeah,
I mean,
or
come on, like that is amazing. Also, if you were to force yourself to do it, you would learn so many things. So I received this challenge and I want to encourage people to also do it for themselves. The challenge was, well, a friend said, you do all these things and your days get so packed. How about you take every day, pick 2 hours and create space where it's non-productive. So you're not focused on the task, you're not focused on anything except to pause and to take a breath. And I was like,
Mhm.
2 hours, 2 hours in a 24 hour,
Ours is
that's
a
a lot.
lot.
But you can do 15-minute segments. And I've been doing it like I'll do half an hour. Like I'll do one day I did 5-minute segments up, and I was like, hey, that's a lot of segments to get to
A
two
lot of
hours.
disruption. Yeah.
Right. But like it was so cool because it was quick. So I could go outside, stand in the sun and just stand. I was like standing outside. It was wild. I don't think I would have thought to do that if I didn't have this challenge to create space for myself. But it's not for
Mhm.
yourself, quote unquote, unproductive. Release all of it. It's just for yourself, for
Yeah.
for you, like in the most basic, simplistic, beautiful way.
Mhm. Mhm. I love that. And I one of the things that I talk to people a lot about, 'cause I mostly coach parents and or educators. Um, but I've never looked at, okay, this is my work life, this is my other life. This is just my life.
This is my
It's
life.
all my life.
It's
It's
not bifurcated.
all my life. And so if you can choose, ways to continue to be the person that you want to be, right? Because we're all evolving till we're no longer here in all aspects of your life, then it doesn't feel like, okay, I have to be this person at work and then now I need work-life balance. Just, live your life and be joyful about it. And one of the most important things for children is, well, I learned this in my graduate program too, but there was a study done, and this came from the vice president of the university, and she said, "Yeah, do you know what the most common thing is between young adults who are fulfilled, um, successful, and joyfully engaging in the world?" And it was a happy mom. Yeah, so be
Mhm,
happy, be joyful. You don't have to rescue your children. You don't have to do everything for them. You just have to model joyfully engaging, in the
mhm,
world. So,
mhm.
all right. So, this is so great. Can't wait to dig into your materials a little bit more. And if there's one thing that you would love the listeners to walk away from or walk away with today, what would
Walk
it
away
be?
from. Yes. I think, this idea, like, me power, like our me power we have with ourself and that self in relation to the world. And we can't build a better world on our own. We need each other. And so
Hmm.
isn't it to be with people who are stepping into this power that is so
Yeah.
beautiful and they shine from the inside out. So I really want
Yeah.
to encourage folks to keep creating spaces for little people to do that and for
Yeah.
the adults to do that too because we have to
Yeah.
fill our cup.
Right. And just because we're, 40, 50, 60 doesn't mean we can start that we can't start that journey.
1000%. So thank you
Right.
so much for having me
Yeah, it
today.
was so great
Mm,
talking to you. And I know we'll stay in touch and keep collaborating. And I'm
excellent.
sure my listeners will love this episode and take a lot of from it. So thank you so much. It was
Thank you.
great talking to you.